Got a Mitsubishi VCR in that apparently my neighbor found at the side of the road, and judging from the condition of it, I don't doubt that. Is this one going to be repairable? Well, I guess we're going to have to wait and find out. But for starters, it has no power cord. Somebody cut the power cord off. So what other damage is in this one awaiting to be found? This one could be a tough one. Let's check it out and see what happens. Got a VCR here. This one's a Mitsubishi, I guess. Either Electrohome or Mitsubishi. That doesn't work. And, well, this isn't probably the only reason why it doesn't work, but somebody cut the Fukin cord off of it. Like, who would cut the Fukin cord off of a VCR? It's an Electrohome AVR K33. This is the Mitsubishi made one. And, well, that's one of the reasons it doesn't work. I have a feeling there's more reasons than that. I kind of get the suspicion that somebody found this at the side of the road and brought it to me to see whether I could make it work. Who knows? But someone cut the cord off it, like as if the copper in that cord is worth anything. Either that or they just needed a cord for something, and then threw the machine out. So the machine might even work. Somebody may have just thrown it out and chopped the cord off it for all I know. I don't know anything about it. Can't plug it in until I replace the cord. So, first things first, let's get the top off this one. These machines were generally pretty good. As in, one of the best VHS machines, in my opinion, that's ever been made. Better than those Panasonics and better than the JVCs. These machines, this specific line of Mitsubishi machines. Mitsubishi used to be junk, but they became very good when this model came out, and you'll see why once I take the top off it, providing that all the pieces are there. And it looks like everything's there. Common problems on these were this got frozen, which is stuck on here. I got to clean that up. That would break the pinch arm. Would break on this post. What do they call this? The elevator gear, and well, this is the pinch arm assembly. But it would drop down like all the machines of this era. There's another guide that pulls the tape up. That's frozen too. You can see it's frozen because it's not retracting. So this needs some mechanical work. And that might be why this thing was taken out of service. Other common problems on these Mitsubishi machines is capacitors tend to blow up in the power supply, even though, oh, that's interesting. Look what someone's done here. A fuse blew, and rather than put in a proper F-size fuse, someone's taken a regular fuse, wrapped it with heat shrink, and soldered it down to the terminals. What kind of Mickey Mouse repair was that? I have confidence, though, that I may be able to get this thing running. They had a conventional transformer, no switching power supply on this. These capacitors here were known to spew their guts and piss all over the board. It looks clean. Doesn't mean that they're not going to blow up as soon as I apply power to it, but I don't see any of the telltale signs that these caps have blown up. That doesn't mean that they say that they won't once I power it up. Aluminum die-cast chassis on these ones, very reliable. Just say the grease, the black grease on here dried up. In fact, all the Moly Coat little packs that I've been using over the years, when you purchased a new pinch roller for one of these machines from Mitsubishi, it came with a pack of that Moly Coat grease. That's where I got all of mine from, was from that, because this black grease that's in here, which is now basically turned to cement, this all has to be cleaned up. We use isopropyl to clean that off and re-lubricate it. They also had one big belt on the bottom, so we'll pull the bottom off this one. Might as well just do a complete visual examination on this unit before I apply power to it. How bad is this going to be? Actually, not as bad as I thought. That belt is in remarkably good shape. So quite often this belt turned to mush. This one has not. It's got the new type of capstan motor in it, which is good. The original capstan motor had a plastic pulley, a black plastic pulley around it, and it would crack and it would start to slip, and you'd find that people say, well, it won't load a tape, and you turn it on, you see the motor spinning, but this wasn't turning at all because the hub was slipping on the the pulley was slipping on the hub, and we'd pull the hub off and put some epoxy on or crazy glue and glue it back on and let it dry, and then it would work. But they came out with an improved motor which had a solid brass pulley, and that solved that problem. As you see, the belt is in good shape. This part of the mechanism needs to be re-lubricated as well. That black grease goes bad on here as well and gums up, causes it to jam. But other than that, I think maybe lubrication, replace the power cord, replace that fuse, obviously, is going to get this one running. After not seeing any VHS players, or very few over the course of the last several years, I'm starting to see VHS players show up again, and it blows my mind as to why people still want to use this old technology. I just don't understand it, why people want to use this old crap. I can understand for playing back, you know, home videos to digitize, but watching movies, I guess there's some movies that were never released on digital or on DVD, and people may have them. That might be the only reason, but it's not like you can go out and rent movies, or can you? Maybe I'm wrong. Am I living in a cave and Blockbuster's opened up again at every corner? But I don't understand why these things are becoming popular again. But I've seen a few of them over the past couple months where I never thought I would see a VHS machine, other than someone wanting to fix one for archiving. Anyway, let's start with the basics. Let's lubricate the parts that are definitely sticking on this, and then we'll try applying power. So first we'll pop off this clip. This one's a C clip because of its shape. The other ones are an E clip. Take off that C clip, remove the cap from the tower gear, and remove the gummed up. And what would happen on these is this would freeze and it would break this piece right here, because the tower gear would try to pull it down or raise it up, and it would snap it. It would usually snap off one of these pieces here. Sounds like a street cleaner going up the street. And it is. Now that's a job. I would highly recommend it. Get a job with the city, driving the street cleaner. You get to drive the snowplow in the winter and the street cleaner in the summer. That is what I would call a no-stress job. Just drive around the neighborhoods at like 1 mile per hour and clean the streets. Okay, we'll get some isopropyl alcohol on here and clean up this old gummed up crap grease that was on here. Clean this all off. Clean it off the tower gear. Clean it off the worm gear here on the load motor. One thing I could never figure out why Mitsubishi did this, but they had this little belt right here. See this little belt right there? Why is that belt there? what purpose does it do? All it does is turn a little free-running pulley that does nothing. I think it was put there to help unload a tape manually. If it got jammed, you could just turn it like that by hand rather than getting your fingers down into here and getting them all greasy. That's the only thing I could think of it was there for. But the problem is, once a mechanism was jammed, generally the belt would slip or the belt would wear out and it didn't have enough torque left to do anything. I thought it was kind of useless, but hey, it's there. But why? That's the question, right? Push this one through here. This will clean off the grease that's inside the bearing.
One of the things that would happen is that little belt would get loose, jam the loading motor, and then blow the fuse.
Get that old dried grease out of there. So now this will slide up and down freely, as you can see. We haven't lubricated it yet, though. I'm just going to clean it up first, and then I will put some new lube on there. Do the same for this guide here. This has got to come off because this one, as you can see, is stuck. It's not returning. So alignment will need to be done once this is done. Same goes for here. We can wipe off. This is still wet. With alcohol, I can wipe off these tracks here because this is going to get stuck as well. We got to do the bottom on this machine. There's no question that the chassis below needs to be done as well because it will be gummed up. It's the same grease that they used, that black graphite based crap that went bad on all of them. Okay, this one's a 7/32 socket will fit this one. This is like an aircraft nut. It has a nylon retainer lock on top that so it won't back off on its own. Okay, we got to remove this gear here first, this fan gear, otherwise we can't remove the rest of the P6 guide, as it's called. There is a timing mark, and that timing mark is the last tooth lines up right here with this hole. Right? So that's how you know that you're lined up, because that last tooth there will point right at that hole. We have to obviously move it out of the way a bit so that we can lift this gear out of place and take it out of the way. Now I can remove this, which comes off quite easily now that I've broken the bond, and we'll clean this, the mount. Take that spring out of there to do this work. We'll clean the post, and yes, there's still plenty of alcohol on here that will clean it. It hasn't dried that much yet. What I'll do is I'll pull a bit of the cotton off the top with this cotton swab, and I'll push it through using the remainder of the stick to push it through here and clear out the dried grease from inside. So now I've got a nice clean bearing that I can re-lubricate and reassemble. This is a synthetic hydrocarbon grease from PRB. It's similar to the other stuff. I don't know if there's anything left in here or not. I'll have to get a new one of these. Okay, I'll use some of the yellow grease. Incidentally, this tube is empty. This is what I used to buy. I have some of this stuff because I got a bunch of this stuff for free. This Molly Coat PG641. This is basically the same thing. Okay, it's a synthetic hydrocarbon grease. So as you can see, it's lithium soap gelled grease, medium viscosity. This is essentially the same stuff as that. So when I run out of this, which I'm down to like a couple of bags of this, I'll go back to using this stuff here. I've had this for years. It had fallen down behind my bench, but it was empty, so that's why it fell down behind my bench. I hadn't used it because it was pretty much done. So I'll take some lithium grease and we'll wipe it onto our post here. We don't need much, right? It's they supplied enough with each one of these kits to do about 10 machines. You really don't need a lot of this stuff. It's quite a little bit goes a long way, as they say. And sometimes when you put grease on, too much grease is worse than not enough, because it tends to attract dirt and dust and so forth. So we put a little bit of grease on here and turn this around a bit just to get some into the gears there. Okay, and I'll put some down in the track down here. That the pinch roller will drop into. Now we can reassemble, put the spring back on that retracts the P6 guide. It drops down like that and it fits into there's a little groove down here that it fits into. Okay, as I lower this down into place, I'm going to grab the spring and pull it over into these two slots here. Like that. That's what holds that in place. Now I can lower this guide post down, and this is a critical adjustment, so you have to adjust this once you've got the tape in place so that it will not damage the tape. That's what it should do. It should snap back. Next goes the fan gear, which you drop down on its shaft. And it is going to mush up some of that grease you just put on, but that'll lubricate the base of that. Drop the fan gear into place. Again, we've got to get the alignment correct. It lines up with the last tooth, so usually you have to pull it a bit forward so that it'll drop into place. See, I'm not aligned there, so I got to pull it up a bit more. That's where I want it to be, right there. Okay, that piece is in place. We'll put a little bit of grease onto the pinch roller, wherever I did with that. Put a little bit of Molly Coat right into the pinch roller bearing here. And then it sits on top. just like that. And now the top cover can go in place. This piece fits down into a hole right down there, right? So that fits into that hole right there. Locks that in place, and we can put the clip back on top, and quite often it's easy just to use your 1/4 inch, or in this case it's a 7/32 bit that was used to adjust this, to push that piece back in place. So now that piece is good. We don't have to worry about that breaking. Now we can go to the bottom side and kind of give it a clean up. I'm not going to go quite as extensive on the lubrication of that, just cleaning up the black grease so that the pieces don't stick together. So this plate sticks. This is a known sticking point. There's two plates that slide back and forth. So what we want to do is we want to separate the two of them so that the grease that is in between the two plates will be cleared up. Now you don't have to take these apart if you don't want. Usually you can just use some alcohol and clean off enough of it, and it will solve the problem. If you want to do it right, remove the clips and cut washers. I seem to have gotten that one off without ripping it apart. Note over here, this rides on the face of this, not underneath. When you pull this off, a spring is going to pull this back, and a common mistake people make is they don't pull this guide back into place before they put the cam mechanism back on. And then what happens is when the cam mechanism slides this way, instead of the plastic pin riding on this side and dropping into here, guess what happens? It's on this side, and it gets trapped by the bracket, which continues to move that way, and then you end up with a plastic arm that's broken, and then you've got a machine that you've basically condemned to the scrap heap. So that one is very important if you're going to take this mechanism apart, as I am, to do some cleaning. Remove the clip carefully as to not have it go flying. And now we can separate the two plates. It's just held in place. There's a little plastic clip over here. Just pull it out of the way, and this will lift off. There's another clip over here, and another one over here. And this will lift out. Okay, that's one plate. Remember, this is that guide that needs to be pulled back when you put it together. If you don't, you're going to have a problem. We can now lift out the second plate. Remove that spring. Now we can lift this plate out. This is what you need to do if you want to get to this gear here to lubricate it. But sometimes these get noisy, but it's really not that necessary to take this one out. So I just wanted to show you guys that, how it comes out, because all the cleaning we're going to do is on top here. And we'll just clean off this crap, glue, or this grease that's basically turned into glue. All the manufacturers that used this stuff had problems with it. It should have never been used, but at the time, I guess they figured it was the best they could get, or nobody anticipated the problems that it was going to cause down the road as far as gumming up machines. And gum up machines it did. See, this is the guide that pin has to sit over top of. If it goes the wrong way, it's going to be broken by that little hook there. This is the inside surface of this. One thing worth noting on these machines is that even though they were a solid aluminum die-cast chassis, these parts are made out of stamped steel. So if this unit is stored in a damp environment, such as in a garage or something, they will rust. And I have seen them where they've actually been rusted together and they don't budge because they're solid rusted together. So that is something to keep in mind, that these type of machines do not like being stored in a damp environment, or they will not last. Okay, time to put this piece back together. If we remember how things go, it goes in kind of like this, and we do have to make sure that this catch is on the south side, south being down on the screen. This has to be outside of that guide. So if we pull it into place like that and then drop it down, it will line up properly, and then we can push the two pieces together. Oops, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to put lubricant on there. I should just throw a bit on the surfaces down here first. We'll put some Molykote grease down here. We don't need a lot, just a little bit on here, and a little bit down here, and some here where the parts slide together. That should probably be more than enough. Again, this control arm goes through here, and you have to make sure that that other piece is riding on the right side. So pop it in place, and then set all the plastic clips. Once the plastic clips are in place, we'll put a little bit of grease on the top side here, right here. A little bit on that one. A little bit more down here. Put grease in here. And that's probably enough. I don't want to waste the stuff because I don't have much of it left. Clip number 1 goes on. To push the smaller clip in place, but you can usually just push it on with your thumb, just like that. Clip number 2, the cut washer. Goes over here. Actually, this one's probably not even a cut washer. This is just a full washer, full clip. And of course, Mr. Spring goes back where Mr. Spring belongs, right here. That takes care of the bottom side of this, and yes, I could put a little bit more Molykote grease, maybe a little bit there and a little bit there. We don't need much. Okay, I think that's got that part taken care of. Now you know what else we have to take care of on here? The mode switch. That needs to be done every time on one of these machines, because you know it's going to be bad, especially after it's been sitting around for a number of years without being used. And to say, I don't know how long this one's been sitting around. This one's been probably sitting around for the past 10 or 15 years untouched. Okay, now let's deal with the power problem. Some idiot lopped off the power cord, but it's easy enough to attach a new one. In fact, I can just put it right into this existing strain relief and either splice it inside here or just solder it down to the terminals. I think I'll just splice it inside I'll just wrap the wire together and leave what's excess wrapped up in the back here. But they can be coaxed into releasing. I'll get the new power cord and we'll put it through. Leave myself a couple of inches of wire. Don't need much. One thing I can say is I like these strain reliefs much better than the ones that you have to squeeze to try to fit through the hole in the back of a chassis. They're a pain in the butt to work on. These ones here are pretty simple. So I'm just going to splice the wires together, and we'll put some heat shrink tubing around the splice. I remember a few years ago when people were throwing stuff, well, you can't throw this stuff out for spring cleanup anymore, but people used to toss their electronics in the garbage, put it at the side of the road on spring cleanup day. And everyone used to make the rounds looking for goodies. And the problem is, a lot of times you'd roll up on something and pick up what seemed like to be a really nice television or a real nice receiver, only to find out that some jerk had removed the power cord, cut it off like this one. Probably what happened to this one is it was left out at the side of the road and someone came along and, oh yeah, there's copper in that power cord. They didn't want the whole unit, they just wanted the copper power cord, and clipped the cord off. I remember going around the neighborhood and finding, all kinds of cool stuff, power tools and, leaf blowers and the whole works that had the power cord. Leaf blower might only have a 6-inch power cord that's long enough to plug into the extension cord, but someone would cut the plug off and steal 6 inches of wire, as if that copper's worth anything. But hey, they go to work. They go to more risks than that, stealing the power wires off power poles, the ground, steal the ground bond wire, and also even stealing telephone wires. It's not so much of a problem for us now because a lot of stuff has been moved over to fiber optic. But a couple of years ago, the cable maintenance guys were getting constant calls at like 3 o'clock in the morning, going out to have to put cable back up because someone actually climbed the pole and cut down a 50 or 100 pair cable, and it would do that. Ridiculous, huh? Alright, now let's just see whether this thing powers up. We'll do that first, and then I'll clean the mode switch. We'll see if this thing powers up and goes through the motions, or does it go boom. I have a display on the clock. Display is lit up, and I have power. That's a good sign. It turned off. I have power. And then it looks like it goes off right away. So something is not right. So we have more problems than just the cord being cut and the mechanism being gummed up. Let's watch the loading motor when I hit the power button and see if it moves. Ah! So we know something's trying to do something. And the power's on the machine now. Now it's gone off. Hit the power button. Power turns on. See the loading motor move. And then move back. So that might be it might be trying to detect the mode switch moving, and the mode switch may be all gummed up and isn't registering. That's a possibility. We see the gears turn. and I can run the front loading mechanism through the paces by turning the capstan motor by hand, and it loads. So I've got the tape is down. Let's try cleaning this switch. Gotta be careful, don't get your soldering iron anywhere near this edge, because this edge is magnetic, and if you heat it up or damage it with an iron, you'll ruin the capstan motor. So keep the soldering iron away from it while you're working on it. So I'll just, and that also includes any of the excess hot wick, because it will act like a degauser and demagnetize the motor. So okay, that trace lifted. I'll have to repair that one. Looks like all these traces have lifted a bit. I think this was repaired at some other point. Someone else has repaired this thing. But we'll have to repair that trace here that's come up. Not too difficult, it's right there. Yeah, those contacts are pretty bad. See what I mean? If we look at the trace that's damaged, we see that the trace here that's damaged goes back to this one. Put the switch back in. There's a keyway here that lines up with the cam gear. So as long as we line up that keyway, it will be in the correct position. We'll solder these other ones back down, and I'll run a jumper wire over to that one there. Okay, that's reconnected. I was wondering why my soldering iron beeped there. I hit the dial and it went up to like 760 degrees. So we'll just dial that back down. Okay, let's see now if this thing behaves any different. Still got a problem. Still not doing what it's supposed to do. I'm just loading the mechanism manually. I want to see whether, first of all, if anything jams. It seems to be turning fairly freely, so that shouldn't be a problem. But I want to run it through its cycle to get it loaded, and then I'll power it up. I want to see if it'll unload if it realizes that there's no tape in it and it's in the loaded cycle. Normally a VCR, if it's in the loaded, like the fully loaded position and the power is removed, the first thing it'll do when you apply power is try to unlace the tape. Turn the pinch roller, it's moving the capstan, just turning the reels. Let's just power it up and see whether it does anything. And it does. It does unload. Therefore it is registering the mode switch. But it won't stay turned on. I turn on the power, it comes on for a second and then shuts off. I think the problem on this, when I reset the mechanism ejected the cassette holder. I think the problem is the capsule motor is not coming in. Watch, when I push the tape in, that should fire the capsule motor up to drop the tape in, but it's not. And then the power goes off. Okay, power will stay on. And if I try to put the tape in, it's like it's going to turn the capsule motor on to suck the tape in and nothing happens. Normally what would happen is when you push the tape in, it triggers a switch, which would then turn the capsule motor on, which would then, of course, drop the tape into position, and then it would load it. So if I drop the tape down, all the way down, by hand. Okay, tape is down now. I wonder if now whether it will try to load the tape when I turn on the power. I think we have a capsule motor problem on this. You see, it's trying, but what would normally happen is the capsule motor would kick, and then it would turn everything on. A lot of times this little capacitor here, C6, will go bad and cause the motors to not run properly. I've got voltage at the IC, but no attempt for the motor to start turning. So I don't know whether the IC is bad or whether it's just not getting a signal from the servo. But a lot of times these little caps in the feedback circuit, they go bad and the motor won't run. So let's just remove this one and replace it. So this cap is a 10 microfarad at 25 volts, and as you can see it's completely open. So let's just try putting a new one in and see whether that will start the motor turning. Okay, just got that one installed. Look right down here. You see that? That pin is broken. That's the frequency generator for the capsule motor. We'll just try soldering that pin back on and see whether that does anything. Capsule motor is not turning, and that's the reason why this thing I think is stopping. It's either the motor itself, it could be the IC itself, but that pin there is definitely broken. You can see it if you look at it closely. Actually, this one's broken too. A closer inspection shows that this other one's broken here. This is all probably corroded from that capacitor juice that came out of this cap that leaked. That cap that I replaced was leaking. You can see the evidence of the corrosion on the board here. That pin's broken, as is that one. So I'm going to try and repair them. I probably won't be able to show you guys me soldering it because I'm going to be in real close like this to see what I'm doing. Well, I've tried to solder some wires on here to extend it, but there's not much left to bite on. See, normally with an IC like this, when it's got voltage, and it does, it has the 5 volts and the 12 volt supply rails. If I were to give it the wet finger test, we would expect to see the motor start running, right? But we're not seeing anything happening here, not even any attempt at moving it. So I have to think that probably the IC itself is no good. Needs a capsule motor, which is not going to happen. Not on a unit like this. You'd never find the parts for it. Unless I had another machine that I could scrap a motor out of, which I don't believe I have any. I do have these chassis, but they're all in working condition. So I think this one at this point is going to be a write-off. It's just got too much wrong with it. That's probably why it was disposed of and the power cord was chopped off of it, because somebody else already looked at this thing and said throw it out. You can tell it's been sitting around for a while because some of the gears here are starting to rust. You see there's some rust forming on this gear here. So this has been sitting around for a long time without working, without being attempted to be repaired or without being used. This has been a long, long time. So maybe I'm best just to harvest the belt, because that belt seems to still be in good shape, and toss the rest of it. To say the guy that brought it to me, he wasn't expecting a miracle. He just wanted me to see whether it was just the power cord that was chopped off. That's what he thought. He thought, oh, I found a VCR and someone's chopped the power cord off. Let's put a new power cord on and see if it fixes it. Well, I did, and it didn't fix it. So if you notice, if I give the wet finger treatment to the drum servo area, we'll see that the drum will start to, where is it here? The drum will start to turn. There you go, you see? The drum motor is spinning. So we know the drum motor works. Okay. But if I do the same to the capstan motor servo, nothing. Nothing at all. So that tells me that this capstan motor is FUBAR. And the fact that these pins were melted right off and this capacitor was leaking doesn't surprise me anyway. So this machine is going to become a parts donor. That's what it's going to end up being. I'm going to throw it together and just throw it up. I already called the guy and told him, hey, the capstan motor shot on this thing. He said, okay, just throw it out. So I'm going to just throw this together, throw it up into my collection. I'll harvest the belt off it, because that belt looks to be in good shape, so that's a good one to keep. And that's about it. Can't fix them all, but we figured out where the problem is on this capstan motor. That's why it was thrown out in the first place. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Bye.